It's Friday, so that means it's mail day. Come join me as we see what came in the RKM collection for the week ending March 26th. Happy Friday and happy opening week as we welcome you to this week's episode of Mailbox Central for the RKM collection. I'm Adam and just want to thank you again for tuning in this week. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just celebrating the hobby. Yesterday, Em and I got to go down to Baltimore for Orioles opening day. Had a blast. Got to see the new Jumbotron, some of the new ballpark renovations. Always first of the season, everybody's excited for baseball. Everyone's got hopes and dreams for the upcoming year. I'm still hoping for an Orioles World Series. We'll see if this is finally the year. But, again, I think with opening week comes a lot of time to reflect back on a lot of memories. Think back on the people we've lost over the years and had shared opening days with in the past, and or just our love of the sport of baseball, or our love of sharing that shared interest with our family members. There's a lot of reasons why we collect in this hobby, and I think some of that has to do with that passed down knowledge from one generation to the next. And I know the memories that I have following my teams with my parents. I think back fondly on them, and I hope that my kids one day think back fondly on our memories. And one thing that helps connect those memories are the things that we pick up along the way. So some people, they'll collect ticket stubs. I know, obviously, the baseball cards. Think back upon players that you may have followed, rooted heavily for. And when we look at our collections, a lot of times our collections tend to mimic our interests. So a lot of those opening day highlights, from years ago, I can look at my collection and see those same players there that I rooted for when I was a kid with my mom next to me, and who my kids are rooting for today, with me. So again, I think baseball is one of those American things that brings us all together. Some people aren't big baseball fans, but they have those connections through football or basketball, hockey, any kind of sports. And I think our card collecting community in particular, there's a lot between our families and how we grow together and how our collections grow. And I always love seeing other people's collections because it really helps to reflect them. I saw a video earlier this week from Collector's Dream, and the Collector Anonymous had a post, and they're really talking about, we can go after the key cards, but we're also going after those key memories too. And when someone looks at your collection, you want them to have a little reflection of who you are and whatnot as well. So again, I think a lot of my collection does do that. And, again, I hope that, your collections do the same. There's a reason why I have a Pokemon card next to my Hulk Hogan card, next to my Garbage Pail Kid card, these next to my Cal Ripken card. Those were all cards that are key to my growing up and youth. And, there's, I'm sure you guys have some of those connections that bring your cards together. And, a lot of us go after, those Hall of Fame players, or they might go after a particular set of interest to you. For me, I collected York Caramel cards because I grew up in the York area, and that was kind of my tie to home. And, I also have a Philadelphia Caramel set. I now live in the Philadelphia area. So, I try to collect cards with aim for cards for a specific reason rather than just collecting them. Try to have a reason behind my items that I acquire, and that always changes. Sometimes I'll have one focus and then I'll shift to something else, and that's fine too. So anyway, just not to genuflect too long with you guys, but remember, we're here to share our love of cards in our community. Make sure you subscribe, follow along. Please add your comments. If you went to opening day, tell me about it. Our day yesterday in Baltimore was a lot of fun. The weather was nice, and again, it's a chance for me to bond with my youngest for a couple hours. So those are the parts. I'll forget who won the game per se or who they played in 2026 on opening day, but I'll remember being there with my daughter, and that's what kind of connects the sport to the hobby. And while we were there, I don't know if you saw the short we just posted yesterday, but we opened up a pack of baseball cards. Let's have some fun while we're at it, and we're still chasing that 52 mantle. Hopefully one of these packs that we've acquired for 2026 has it in it, but probably won't. But we'll try our best. This week we had 2 cards come in the mail, and I'd like to go over those now with you, or share those with you. So let's take a look. All right, so we had 2 cards come this week in the RKM collection. The first one, way to celebrate opening day this year with the Orioles. We got the 1961 Topps Brooks Robinson, card number 10. Now this card, I think is a great image of Brooks. Obviously, not perfectly centered. It's a little off center, left to right, and top to bottom a little bit. But I thought the image was really crisp. The registration's good. The corners looked pretty good as well. So again, great looking card for 61. And was able to add this. So this now we have 57 through 61 as part of our collection. So that's exciting, being able to get these new cards. And again, Brooks, consummate professional. Can't say enough about him. That's why we picked him for our player run. We have Cal Ripken was the player from my youth, and then for my mom growing up, she was an Orioles fan as well. And Brooks Robinson is was the hallmark player of that era. So again, building this 61 or building this Topps set. Here you see the back again. This year's back design didn't have as much crazy stuff, as far as the artwork and things. Kind of a more basic design, a little bit of illustration there in the bottom, but otherwise nothing too crazy here on the Brooks. So again, first of the 2 cards this week was the 1961 Topps Brooks Robinson. And then, like I said, a collection should always reflect yourself. And, decided to get away from baseball and move to the sport of football, which is, I think, the first time you guys are seeing this in our collection. But I do have a small set of football cards I collect. And one of the first memories I have was watching the 1985 Super Bowl with the Bears and the Patriots, but in particular the Super Bowl shuffle and everything to go with that. And because of that, I've decided to add the 1976 Topps number 148 Walter Payton to the collection. Now this is Walter's rookie card. Love this image of him with the, obviously in football, a lot of the cards you see the players with helmets on. You see a uniform, and the photography, really doesn't demonstrate a lot. There's not a lot of candids and things like that in football cards. A lot of times, very very stiff. You can only show so many images of a guy throwing a ball or catching or running. it's just a snapshot in time. But this really lets you see the player. And I think Sweetness here, this is a great image of him. Love the mesh jersey look and the way this card presents. I think centering is pretty good for the grade. And again, really happy with this example. Now in '85, I remember the Bud Bowl commercials and Spud McKenzie and all that stuff back then. Those were the highlights for me as a kid. Yeah, I was a Redskins fan growing up, so didn't really appreciate at that age, what the Bears dynasty was, or Ditka or any of the other stuff. But as I grew older, you kind of learned that. Obviously, the fridge was the big guy, right? And but the fridge kind of stole a lot of the spotlight from Peyton during the Super Bowl itself, but Walter Payton was really the guy who got them there. Obviously, that strong defense as well, under Buddy Ryan. But so in the 76 tops, Walter Payton. This is part of the top 100 iconic cards set that we're building. PWCC created a list, or did a poll and ranking of the top 100 sports cards in the hobby a couple years back. So wanted to add this. It helps towards that set, and also again just kind of brings back a lot of good memories from my youth and watching the lead up to that first Super Bowl, and more importantly the aftermath, the Super Bowl shuffle, and all the excitement that brought. So again, this is the 76 tops Walter Payton. All right, so like I said, we had two cards come this week. We had our 1961 tops Brooks Robinson, which helps with our Brooks Robinson player set. My mom, she was always a big fan of Brooks, and for opening day, I wanted to make sure we got a new Brooks for the collection. And then I remember the first Super Bowl I remember watching on TV was the 1985 Super Bowl with the 76 tops Walter Payton. Now, the fridge was the real highlight that year, but wanted to acquire that Walter Payton as well. Again, that's the first Super Bowl I remember watching as a kid, and I remember the Bud Bowl commercials with the helmets and such. They don't make Super Bowl commercials like they used to, but anyway, those are the two cards that came this week. Again, hope you are having fun in your collections, having fun in your hobbies. Hopefully you're getting some great cards as well. And I look forward to hearing your comments and such. And we'll catch you next weekend on Mailbox Central. Thanks again for tuning in.